Okay, so thank you everyone for joining today's session. As you can see from the screen there, we're now moving on to the process of actually creating client progress claims and invoicing those clients when we're ready. So we've moved through the concept of it's a project management session that we've done. So we've been focusing on the other side. So in raising subcontracts, purchase orders, and those subcontractors' claims. So today we're flipping it, and it's your turn to actually raise the claims to your clients to get some money into your bank accounts. Okay, so the agenda for today, we're going to go through the process of actually effectively setting up claims. So we'll start with an overview of the claim process. We'll then actually go through and show you how to set up the claims and how to set up schedules. After that, we'll then jump into the monthly process of how do we raise a progress claim each month? What does that look like? We'll talk about retention and the dealing with retention in progress claims and how that can be managed. And then finally, of course, we'll do our normal things at the end. We'll have a quick look at some tasks to complete in your Monday.com board, and then we'll have any questions. Okay, so does anyone have any questions before I get started? Otherwise, I'll just delve straight into our concepts of billing modules in Premiere. All good, let's keep going. Okay, so billing modules in Premiere, we've got 4 options that are available here. Now, today we are focusing on the progress claim module, as we'll call it, okay? There are other options there called Cost Plus, time and materials, and the final one down there, ad hoc AR invoicing, that'll be covered in an accounts session. So effectively, ad hoc AR invoicing is used for things that that aren't part of a progress claim. If you have a job set system with the structure that you need to claim a progress, to claim each month, you must start the process by updating the progress claim details and creating an invoice from that screen, okay, just to allow you to get that details into Premiere. So the ad hoc, as I said, will be covered in a accounting session, and they'll go through in the situations of when you would be using that. Now, stepping back over here, we're talking about progress claim day. Let me just touch base on these other 2. We've got a concept here of cost plus, and we've got a concept of time and materials. Now, throughout the implementation thus far, those of you that have cost plus contracts would have raised that concept here. It's a separate training session, just so that you're aware. So today we're focusing on progress claim, but if you do have cost plus jobs in your current situation, we need to make sure that that cost plus session is actually set up for training. Okay. So progress claims, let's talk about them. So progress claims allows you to set up custom progress claim lines for stage or period-based claims. What this means is that you have full functionality or full ability to actually customize those details. So for example, it's very flexible. So if you have one customer that wants to see it claimed in one way, you can set that up. If you have another customer that wants to see it claimed in a completely different way, you can set that up for their job. Okay, so you have that flexibility there. Likewise, you can set it up for stage. So for traditional stage-based claims is the old house scenario, which most people probably don't use, but it's the concept of having, you have your foundations, then you have your frame, then you have your roof, then you have lockup, etc. Period-based claims is usually your monthly claims. So your client, charging this client each month for the percentage of work that's been completed or you believe has been completed to date. Now, with variations for relating to that job, approval variations can auto roll into a claim schedule. So the key thing is, and when we go through the variations training, is that you'll show that when you set up a variation, when it is approved, it's on that approval date that it will appear in a progress claim going forward. So I'll touch on those screens today to show you where that shows up. But the key is a variation must be approved to allow you to claim against it. Generate a custom progress claim. We've already touched base on that when we had talked about the item up here. So you can generate per job a specific custom claim or progress claim that actually works for that job and for that client. Once the progress claim has been done, it's been assessed, the general process is that you just click Create AR Invoice from the progress claim screen. That will then open the AR invoice screen, the new AR invoice screen, and will create a invoice that you can then subsequently send out to the client when you're required to do that. Now, just one thing to note here. If you go through this process, go all through all the process, create an invoice. Let's say, for example, for some reason, the value of that invoice needs to change. You need to make sure that revisions are done on the progress claim screen. So if by some chance you do a claim, you raise an invoice, you then subsequently want to change the dollar value of that invoice, do not change it on the AR invoice screen. Make sure you come back to the progress claim screen relating to the job and actually update it on that screen there. The system is smart enough to know how to generate, to update the details on the AR invoice, etc. It'll prompt you through the steps. So we'll step through that later. Any questions on that screen there, the progress billing modules? Otherwise, I'll keep moving forward. All good? Let's go. So with the job dashboard, we keep talking about this in a lot of our training because this is your central location you're going to be using on a day-to-day basis. So you'll see here the fields that are highlighted in yellow are the fields that relate to this process of creating progress claims. For example, pending billing means that, okay, some of you have actually started a progress claim, but you haven't actually physically billed it. So it brings to your attention that on this particular job, we have a pending amount, that hasn't been invoiced. If you click on that, it would take you to the progress claim screen. You'd be able to figure out, okay, I can now bill this or not and action something. Pending AP, this actually relates to the concepts around what AP invoices are in the system that have not yet been approved. Now, for general progress claim or lump sum claim, jobs, it doesn't really matter whether there's pending AP invoices, but where this may come in play is if you had a cost plus invoice, a cost plus job, you would want to make sure that any of your pending AP invoices are approved prior to creating your cost plus claim. Now, the other thing is too, is that sometimes when you create a claim, you've actually got to issue a stat debt to say that you've paid all your subcontractors or your bills. So by bringing this to your attention, potentially it allows you to see things that may need to be, considered when you're submitting that progress claim. Down the bottom here, final items, we've got this month billing. So if you'd made a progress claim this month, a dollar figure would fit in there. So if in the month what we're in December here, okay, so if there was a progress claim in December, we would actually see that figure appear in here. And naturally, billed to date is obviously how much have we billed on this job to date. Okay, so let's talk about the final product. So when we're setting up progress claims in Premier, there's two options that we have, I shouldn't say two options, two common options that people set up with regards to what a claim will look like. The first one is what we call a trade-based claim. So this is what a lot of you would have seen in that you have your trade-based claim. You have your details here. You may break it down into trades. So you have your site manager, civil, groundworks, plant hire, concrete. A lot of the times this here is actually relates to, for example, your cost item groups that you have in the system. Okay, so it allows you to actually link into those cost item groups and pull a summary rather than all the individual cost item codes and create a summary of total to claim against in this. You'll see down the bottom here as part of the claim here, here's some variations. So as you raise variations that are approved, they will start appearing on your trade-based claim. The other option here is a stage-based claim. This is what I was talking about before, for example. So we don't find this used as much at the present point in time, but this is another option as well. Completely customizable, you're able to use that. Okay. Now, just with regards to these items here, is anyone here to share what they're currently doing? I'm figuring that most of us may be using the trade-based claim. Any feedback on that? Okay, I'll proceed. Okay. Hi, Lindsay. How are you going?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good, thank you. So you found your way in, so that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, just had an e-link. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. All good. Thank you. You haven't missed much. We'll keep going. Okay. Okay. So the final product here, so is trade-based claim. So this is what most of us are using. So let's now talk about how we set up this in Premier. How do we go about setting up the structure of the progress claim so that going forward, you'll be able to create a progress claim on a month-by-month basis? Now, with the initial setup here, we break it down to two steps. We recommend there's the initial setup of your progress claims, and then there's the monthly process that you go through. So let's work through the initial setup. So we recommend, obviously, as soon as you've got your job set up and you've uploaded your budget, with regards to original estimate with regards to that job, we recommend going through this process and setting up the structure of how you're going to claim this for this particular job. Of course, it doesn't have to be done exactly at the same time, but we obviously recommend getting it done as you set your job up. So it's all in place, ready to go. So when your project managers need to do an actual claim, all the structure is there, ready for them to use. So the initial setup, there's a number of screens that we access, and we'll go through this shortly online, but let's talk to it. The first one here is we go to the job screen, we go to what's called the billing tab. Okay, so we go to the billing tab. In there, we'll identify it and we'll say, okay, this job is going to be a progress claim job. Step 1. Step 2, we go to the progress claim report screen. On this screen here, this pretty much is like a header. I like to think of it as a header, and you can set up your retention claimed details or retention details on this screen as well at this point. Okay. Once you've saved that, you can then click on a button there that says progress claim lines. So step 3 is actually setting up your progress claim lines. Now, this can be done in a number of different ways. The next slides that we go through will actually show you the options you have about how to set up those progress claim lines. But for your detail, yeah, pardon me, for your information, yeah, it's quite flexible in what you can do. We'll be going through one of the system-generated examples today, but some of you will probably find that you'll probably use the Excel upload of progress claim lines to pull in the claim lines that relate to that client. Finally, down there on the progress claim line screen, you're up here, it'll go to the progress line screen. Once you upload that, you'll actually go through and you'll make sure that your contract value totals the claim lines that are in the system. So we'll go through an example of that just to make sure that you understand that. Okay, so once that's done as the initial setup, that's that part. The next part is obviously once it sits in place, ready to go, then monthly, when your project manager needs to come here, they will go to a screen called Progress Claims. And they'll simply add a progress claim, update the details about how much they want to claim, and then they're able to either forward that detail at that point to the client for review and assessment. And when they're ready, they can create the AR invoice from that screen as well. So that's the complete process that we are going to work through shortly. Okay. Any questions on that at this point in time? No, all good. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to double check that there's no one else that got lost in things. All good. That's fine. All good. Okay, let's go back to that. Okay, so next screen here, claim schedules open. So remember how I said when you set up your progress claim lines, you have a number of different ways if you can set this up. The first way is manual entry. So the first way is that we'll go to the screen, we'll actually add the lines, and then we'll actually enter the details line by line by line. Sometimes if you've only got, say, a few progress claim lines, you may find that the easiest option. The second option you have is to use an Excel upload template. So using the Excel add-in, you can download this template from the Get Templates. When you're logged in, you can get templates and download this add-in. And then you can actually set it, so copy it. Say, for example, you had an Excel spreadsheet that had an outline of what the customer requires. You can copy those, create the progress claim lines, and then upload that detail into Premiere. Okay. The third way you can do, and this is what we'll show you today, is using using a template. So we can set up a progress claim job, potentially from using, we could use a template. Sorry, we won't use this today. Template. So you could have a template in the system, and you could actually copy that from another job. So if you use the same structure every time, you could copy it from a template. The one we will be doing today is actually the cost code groups and markup concept. So the final one there, which actually allows us to check the markup percentage from the original estimate and allows us to update the jobs and structure it based on our cost item groups that have been set up, and we can set it up from that process. So that's what we'll be going through today, because that shows you how the system does items. As I say, some of you may use this upload template. Any thoughts on which way you may want to go at this present point in time? Do you think you might use the upload template? Just wondering. All good. Let me keep going. I'll show you.
We probably will use it.
Yeah, I find a lot of people do use the upload template because different clients want different structures on their claims, and that gives you the full flexibility to get it set up, seeing the lines in Excel, upload it into Premiere, and then you can just continue from there. So yeah, I do find quite a few people use that. Okay. Rightio, let's jump into, time to jump into into Premiere, and we will get going. Okay, so first things first, I'm just going to minimize this screen a little bit, just a little less busyness on the screen at the top. Okay, so in the training that we're going through, we're using training, job number 2503. So the first step, as I said, once you've set up the job and general information, you would come to the billing tab here, okay? Once on the billing tab here, you'll see down the bottom here, we've got two fields. One's called the markup percent and one's called the billing type, okay? Now, first things first, this markup percent, we need to access this information and put the markup percent in here, because if we're going to utilize the function within Premier to create the progress claim from the cost item code / groups. So to do that, if I go to a screen called the original estimate, actually I can just go back here. So let's go to the cost structure. Let's go to the view estimate of that particular job. I think I've got the right one. Yes, I do. 2503. You can see down here, if I look at that, you can see that the markup percentage is 11.316. Okay, so if we go back over here and go back into our billing, okay, we want the markup percentage. Okay, so that's what we're going to copy. So we're going to copy that figure. So go Control C from that, come back to the jobs, pop that in here, okay, and do that. Now, the key reason we do that is because we're using the process in this Premier, okay? If you're just uploading your templates, you may not need to do that, but you can just for reference if you want to have that detail there. Okay, next thing we do is you choose billing type. So I'm going to choose progress. As soon as I choose progress, or the first time I choose progress on this job screen, it will automatically open this progress claim report screen, okay, and start the process for us. Now, if I've been on this job screen before, and I've come away and I've saved it and I go back to it, and it won't automatically open. I'll have to go and find this screen by just typing in the progress claim reports at the top and go and find this screen. Okay, only the first time that we select progress does it automatically do it. Okay, so on this screen here, you'll see there's come up. It's linked the customer, it's put up the job, and it says, okay, report number 1. So you have the ability in Premier to set up multiple progress claim reports on a job. So if you needed to, you could, if you had, say, stage 1 and stage 2, and you wanted to set up claims separately from that, you could set up multiple reports and then raise a claim for each report. So to do that, you would just simply set in click in add, and then you can add in another one under here, be the next one. So that'd be number 2, and you can put, say, stage 2 in here. Okay, stage 2. I'm not going to do that today, but just letting you know you are able to do it. So I'll just clear that. So we're going to focus on this one here. So let's just say it's the training job. Description doesn't really matter what it is in here. Whatever makes sense to you about the description on this progress claim report screen, that is perfectly okay. Okay. So I'm just going to put in our training job name and hit save. Okay. Once we've got that information in there's a couple of things we need to consider down the bottom here. Okay. First of all, relates to retention. So let's say, for example, this particular progress claim for our client had retention. Our typical is obviously our 10% to a maximum of, down here, to a maximum percentage of 5. Okay, so you'll see how I updated those details. Now, in Australia, we tend to only use work completed retention. We don't tend to use this here, so that will generally always be 0. If we're setting retention up as we're used to using it, it'll be 10%. We'll change the maximum retention here to a percentage and choose 5. Now, just a couple of other little background information here that you can do. You'll notice here retention applies to all lines. You have the ability of saying, okay, it does apply to everything across this contract. Or let's say, for example, somehow you negotiated that you wouldn't have retention on any variations. So in that case there, you would say, okay, it only applies to my original contract lines. Any variations don't have retention withheld on it, for example. Okay. The other way here, obviously, is only additions to the contract. Probably don't see that as much. You probably see mainly these two. But in general rules, it'll apply to all the lines. The other item down here, maximum retention, you have a couple of different options here. So if you didn't have retention, or if it was a flat weight, so let's say it was just a flat, 5% up here, you could just say it's not applicable because we don't need to put anything down here as a maximum. It'll just calculate a flat 5% across every single claim. Other item here is maximum amount. Sometimes, some contracts, and sometimes when if you have to actually manipulate data in Premier, sometimes we'll say, okay, change it to a maximum amount. So there might be a contract that they take a maximum, let's say, of $100,000 retention. You could change it to maximum amount. You could then actually type in a dollar figure in here, and that would, and that means it'll only calculate retention up until you've withheld $100,000. Okay, let's revert it back to our regular one. And we'll just save that. Okay. Now, when we save this, what it will do, if you ever change this retention details and this screen appears, what it will do is we'll always answer yes to this, because it's telling the system, okay, I'm going to change the retention. I need that to forward through to our screen called progress billing lines, where it actually records those retention details line by line by line. Okay. So if you see this, always say yes. Otherwise, it won't update that next screen when we get to the progress claim line screen. A couple of other items on this screen here. Claim form down here usually will default to your standard progress claim. So generally you don't need to change that, but it does give you the ability, if you needed to customize something per job, you could. Format is 2 decimals, dollar cents, normal scenario. Default billing distribution should always default to whatever your revenue cost item code is that has been set up. So in ours, it's 99-99. Yours might be 4 nines, it might be something else. Whatever your revenue code, it should default to whatever has been uploaded into the system. You shouldn't need to touch these at any particular point in time. We'll just leave them as they are. If you think you may have a need, reach out to support, ask the question about what you do. Final one down here, biller options. Yeah, we always just leave this invoice line summary. We don't change it at the present point in time. And but you can test this or fiddle around with this in your test environment if you wanted to. So we set up the progress claim report. Third step is to set up the progress claim lines. So this is where we come into the functionality around, we want to update the line by line detail. So if we refer back to our our original claim setup options, so the progress claim setup options, we have the ability of manually adding in which case we'd go add line. Okay, we then item number. Now, if you're using numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., 10, 11, 12, always use 0, 1. Otherwise, the order will be slightly out. So always make sure you use 0, 1. Okay, you put in the details of, line details. I'm not going to save this, but I'm just giving you an idea. Whoops. Details. You then put in the schedule value. So you put in the total dollar value that relates to the total contract price or the proportion that relates to this line, excluding GST. Everything in project management is usually ex GST, so just keep that in mind. If you did that, you would just keep adding lines until you had it all. And at the bottom here, you'd be making sure that your, the total details all add up. Okay. I'm just going to delete that because we're not going to do that. That's the manual way. The other option is if you had a template, so you could copy from. So you have the ability of copying from another job. So if there was another job in the system here, you could go and choose this. You could choose, say the report number that you want to, choose this report number here, and you could go okay. The structure of whatever was set up in this progress claim on this job would be copied in. Okay, I'm not going to do that today. Okay, what we are going to do is we're going to actually copy from, but we're going to utilize this bottom item down here. That's what we're going to utilize. Now, before I do that, I just want to touch base on the other option, which was the Excel upload. So if you're using the Excel upload, we're not using the import button here. You're actually going into Excel, you're logging into the add-in, and you're going to be uploading from the Excel template. Okay. Any questions on those concepts before I delve into the next stage of using the system to actually create your cost your progress claim lines? No, all good. Okay, so let's talk about here. So we're going to use the final item here today. So you can see how quickly and easily you can utilize it. And just remember, your cost item codes and groups are completely separate from your progress claim lines. So while we're using those in today's example, we're only using it because it's a simple way of getting a progress claim line schedule set up based on our structure around our cost item codes. They do not need to be the same. And as I've said, you have that fully customizable ability of making sure that they are completely different. Okay, so looking at this method here, copy billing lines. Now, there's some options here. I'm going to go through. Some of these I look at and I think I'm not really sure why you'd use these, but obviously there's been cases. So the first way of creating a progress claim is that you can go through and select all your cost items. That won't put any markup. It'll just purely be costs. End of story. Okay, so it won't have any of those items there. So it allows you to do every single cost item that you got on your budget and pull those in. The second one here is cost item with revenue estimates. Now, this is a little bit the same. So obviously you can put in estimated revenue figures. I must admit, I don't think I've seen anyone over here use that in Australia. So obviously there's a case for it, but I have not seen it being used. The third one here is cost items and calculate the scheduled value based on the cost estimates plus the job markup. Now, if you choose cost items, that will give you the really detailed breakdown of the cost item by cost item as per your budget you've uploaded, and then apply the job markup, which we entered on the job screen, on that first screen we select progress, to those detailed items. So that will give you every single line, which you probably don't need your client knowing. So what we recommend is using the cost item groups. That is where you have grouped cost item codes together by different trades, for example, and then we calculate, we use that, and then we apply the job markup to the total of those cost item groups, and we and we create the lines from that. So that's what we're going to do. So I tick that, simple amount of ticking that, and then I click OK. Once I've done that, you'll see how quickly that has just done that process. So that's what I'm saying. It's a really quick and easy way. If you don't have any structure you need, this is what a lot of clients will use based because it is so quick and easy to do. Okay. Now, once we have got that in here, there's a couple of check measures that we need to do. Okay, so let's just save that. Okay, we'll save that at this point. Now, the first check measure that we need to do, which makes sense, is checking the original contract figure. So this figure here. So I can see here that we are potentially, I think it's $1.02 out, because I suspect my contract should be 180,000. But to confirm that detail, come back to your original estimate and have a look at your revenue here. So as it says there, 1,080,000 is our contract. So we need to make sure that our progress claim lines adds up to that figure. Okay. Now, as it's just a rounding error, so to speak, what we recommend you do is that we actually recommend we edit, potentially say preliminaries, and just round the figure. Now, we don't normally recommend editing here because what that can do is has a flow-on effect of recalculating. When we're editing this, we recommend coming down here to the unit price, and then what we recommend doing is adding that figure onto that. Okay. Now, just bear with me while I get my trusty calculator and add this on. Plus, what did I say? Yep, 1.02, I believe. Okay, so let's update this. Is 205,946.75. Let me just save that. Okay, so there we go. Original contract is now 1,080,000. Okay, so we have this updated. So this is creating the basis for our claims going forward. Okay. Okay. Any questions on that process? Looking good. Okay. Let's keep going. So now we've done that, we've actually stepped through the whole process. So remember, if we go back to our slides, we've done these first things. We've added the progress details. We've added the percentage markup when we did that. We've added the retention details on the progress claim report screen. We then went to the progress claim lines, and then we have created our progress claims. So we've completed the initial setup. So at this point, you could leave it and just say, okay, I'm done. Nothing else has to happen now that the job's been set up. It's waiting for them to use it. Okay. Rightio. Back into our system. Let's just shut some of these screens here. Okay. Actually, I might just go back into that progress claim line screen. I just want to show you a couple of other items here. On this progress claim line screen here, you'll see that the type of lines that we've created are the contract lines. This is the original contract. Now, as you go through the process of doing this job, if you have any variations, when you approve those variations, there's a little tick box that says, please add this to the progress claim lines. So as you approve variations, they will start appearing on this screen here, and they will then be able to be utilized in a progress claim, the next progress claim, and claimed against. Okay. So that's how variations get in. It's through a process of, as you're using the system, creating them through the process. Okay, right, let's go back now. So we've done those items. So now the next thing is we're going to go through the monthly stage. So our project managers come in, we want to do the claim. So we go to a screen called Progress Claims. Now, any of these screens that we've just touched base on before are all accessible from, here. So we'll see Progress Claim Reports, Progress Claim Lines. We're now moving to Progress Claims. Okay. So if I go to Progress Claim screen, I would then choose my job. It's defaulted to the one that we're working on. Okay, so we choose the job. We choose the report number. So if you had 2 reports set up, remember how I said you could do, say, stage 1, stage 2. you would be able to choose that at this point. So you'd be able to choose either which one I'm doing. I'm doing the first one or am I doing the second one? What am I doing? Okay, so it gives you that functionality there. We're just going to choose session, item 1. So to create a progress claim, we simply click add. Okay, so claim number, if it's the first one for the job, we just type in a 1, off we go. Let it default to the details there. You can update it if you want. And then we'd say, okay, we're doing a claim from. So let's say, for example, we're going to do a claim from the 1st to the 4th, 2025. You could click on that detail there if you wanted. Let's say it's the 30th of the 4th. Let's say it's to the current date. We're catching up, okay? Okay. Actually, no, I won't. I'm going to change that. Let's do the 30th of the 4th. Had a thought. Okay. So these fields here are purely for information. So it allows you, if you're looking at this progress claim screen, you can see what claim period was this for. So usually it'll be on that monthly basis. If you are a little bit late or something like that, you may have it from, let's say, from the 1st to the 3rd. If you didn't do the prior month, it might be the 1st to the 3rd through to the 30th of the 4th. It doesn't really have any effect on things apart from recording that detail on the screen. So naturally, you're going to see a list of progress claims on this screen as you go through that will be sequential and gradually build up to your current date. Okay, once we've entered those details, let's come down the bottom here to this main tab. Now, you'll see that the 1,080,000 has come through on this screen here. So this is a summary. So this will change as we do claims. So you'll see here, if there was any variations, you'd see a figure in this field here. Okay, and then as we update items and as we issue claim or as we put claims through, these will all be updated. How we do that? There are two tabs that we go to. The first one is this contracts tab. Now on this contracts tab here, this is where all those scheduled values that were created on the progress claim line screen are pre-filled through to. Okay, so it's on this screen here that you're actually able to enter in the details of where you're up to. Okay, and pardon me, enter the details where you're up to and see what you claimed in the past. So, for example, okay, let's say, for example, here, let's start putting some figures in. So your project manager will simply start going through and say, okay, if there was a previous claim, it would have a figure in this column. This claim work completed. Let's say, okay, we want $100,000. We're pushing the friendship, $100,000 worth of preliminaries. Civil is $40,000. We've just about done that. Demolition is $25,000. We can type in dollar figures here. You're also able to actually type in percentages here. So if for groundworks, you could say over here, we've done, say, 50%, type it, it'll calculate it back as well, just so you know, okay? So yeah, I'm just going to adjust this so that it's, nice round figures just for ease of just showing. So you can see this is what we do. So you're building your claim up. The other thing you can do is that potentially, if you wanted to, you could say, okay, I want to claim 50% across all items. You probably wouldn't use that regularly. You probably do more assessment, but you can do that up here by typing in 50%. It would claim 50% across all the line items that we've got set up. Okay. Rightio. So when we've done that there, that actually then starts formulating this claim. Now, if we had any additions to contract or variations, we would click on this tab here. A same type of list would happen, and we would come in here. We'd say, okay, we want to claim, let's say 50%, 50% of this variation. So you type in 50%, and it will calculate back the amount claimed if we had variations. Okay, so let's just go back. So they're the two tabs a project manager will be reviewing as they go through and create the claims. Once they have identified, this is what this looks pretty right. I want to have a look at the claim. Let's go here to more actions and let's go print. When we print that, that'll create a progress claim that potentially can be forwarded out to the client. Now, when we create this progress claim, it depends on your processes. So some people will actually create a progress claim and then they will download this progress claim and they'll attach it to an email, forward it out to the to your clients and say, please see attach my progress claim. Can you please assess it? Okay. Others will actually create a progress claim, approve the invoice as well, and attach both. Does anyone care to share what they're currently doing? Do you normally just send your progress claims out first, wait for it to be certified, and then come update the invoice?
Yeah, that's what we do. Yeah. In case there's any adjustments or they disagree with the percentage for some reason.
Exactly. And that's what we find a lot of people do. That's exactly what they do. Okay, so just so you know, though, it is possible to get the claim, create the invoice, and then if you do change it, and we'll go through that example later, you can actually come back in and update the claim and reissue the invoice. We'll go through that process a little bit later. Okay, so here's the progress claim. This is our standard format. So you'll see here, it's got the original contract sum. It's got the total completed to date. Because we set up retention here, it's now calculated retention. So it's showing that, yeah, we're claiming 175,500. And then, yeah, on this particular claim, it's showing the balance to return. Down the bottom here, this is where you get your breakdowns. So we have utilized our cost item groups in the system. So that is why it's pulled up here. So you'll see that we've got the current percentages, current dollar figures, current percentages, and then we list down all the other items, but we haven't made any claims against those to date. If there was variations, you would see a list down here as well of those variations, and it would show the same type of details. So this gives the client the full, the full details, I suppose, to allow it to be assessed. Okay. Okay, let's shut that. Okay, so let's say, for example, we're happy with this, no more problems, what have you. Well, yeah, this is what we want to. We've sent away, they've come back, said, yes, it's correct. The next step, obviously, now is to invoice. Okay, so when we hit the invoice button here, what that'll do is that will actually open up the new AI invoice screen. Now, this will depend on who can do this, will depend on their role securities. So it depends whether you're allowing your project managers to do this or whether that flicks back over to an accounts function, in which case whoever's doing the accounts function will need to go to the progress claims screen and create a new AI invoice from that screen. Never just go to the new AI invoice screen and add it in, because that will actually, it doesn't link back to your progress claim. Always come to your progress claim screen and then go more actions, click invoice to make sure those two items are linked. Okay. So when it's on this screen here, it's a new AI invoice. Effectively at this point in time, this is just the invoice. They need the invoice, so it's sending it out. So you can check the details, check that the GST is correct, check your information there. If we go to the details on here, you'll see that it's just got a one-liner in here. Okay, the reason it only has a one-liner in here is because all the detail is back on the progress claim that has been issued. Okay, it doesn't come across onto your invoice. It just gives you that one-liner telling you to refer to that progress claim. So that's why a lot of people will send out both, so that you have the progress claim supporting document. When it's been done here, also you'll notice that it's coded everything to where it needs to go. Now, just note here is that it's calculated the retention. So we'll see we had the claim of 195,000. Then across here, it's calculated the max, the 10%, so 19,500. It's deducted that, and then it's applied GST on that reduced value of 17,550 to give us a total invoice value here. So always check the full details on the screen. Make sure you're happy with how the retention is calculated. Make sure the GST is right. It should be if it's set up correctly, but just make sure. If you do see any issues, what I'd recommend, if say, for example, the retention isn't calculating correctly, reach out to us to give you guidance on how to fix that at this point. We'll always recommend that you go back to the setup, update the retention details, and then probably cancel this invoice. Go back to the setup, update the details, and then regenerate the invoice to correct that data potentially. Okay, so we just need to be mindful of making sure that this retention has calculated correctly. Otherwise, you'll get ongoing issues with how retention is calculated, and you'll be doing manual adjustments, which can get very messy. So if this isn't right, reach out as soon as you realize it's not right. Okay, and make sure that we get it set up at the start. Okay. So we've got that. So what we can do, we can have a look here, normal story as an AP person, come here, we can print the invoice, okay, and have a look at what it looks like. It'll just be an AR invoice, so to speak. So once we get that, let's open that. Okay, so you'll see here, it's literally got very basic details on it. Okay, it'll have your bank account details down the bottom, whatever that be. And I'll just have that pre-filled through, but that's it. We're happy with that invoice. We want to actually post it. We want to get that onto the general ledger to an outstanding amount. Currently, it's sitting as pending. Okay. Now, you'll also notice over here that the progress claim is also sitting at pending. Now, the reason being is that it'll sit at pending until we have posted this batch. So let's post this invoice. Okay. Get it through in the system. Okay, so it's posted through. So now this is an outstanding status. It's on our debtors ledger. Now, if we come back into progress claims here, if I refresh this screen, okay, it'll say that that's been billed. So that's that's the start to finish of what we need to do. Okay. Any questions on that at the moment? All good. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you the example. Let's say, for example, we're going to do an example here. Let's say, for example, you have done your progress claim, you've raised your invoice, sent it to the client, and the client, for some reason, has come back and said, oh, no, sorry, you can't claim $100,000 worth of preliminaries, you can only claim $50,000. Okay. Now, rule number one, never ever edit the invoice that is on the posted AP invoice screen. Okay. So if I just shut that, so that invoice would be on the posted AP invoice screen. Never edit from the invoice. We almost must come back to the progress claim screen. We then must go into more actions here. We must go revise. It'll step you through the process of updating these details. Okay. So it says this claim has already been invoiced. Are you sure you want to revise it? Well, yes, we do, because we need to reduce that preliminary amount down because the client has now decided that they don't like it. So you'll notice that this comes into a revising status. Now, anything in Premier that's in a revising status should only be in there temporarily. Never leave anything in a revising status because the system doesn't know what to do with that. So you could get fuzzy figures on certain reports if you have things in a revising status. Always make sure you go into revising. Let's come in here. Let's fix this up. We're going to say it's $50,000, not $500,000. Change it down to $50,000. Okay. We then go through the process. Okay, if I was to print that, you would see that it would update those details on the claim. Okay, so it's updated our totals that we can claim. Thinking. Okay, so you see that it's adjusted those figures. Our claim's down to 145. Retention's been adjusted as we would expect. And then on our claim form here, it's adjusted that down to a 50,000. Okay. From there, what we will do is we will actually then go and invoice this again. Okay, so it's sitting in the revising. We now want to invoice it. When we go invoice it here, it'll come up here with a prompt. It says, okay, invoice number 1137 has already been generated for this claim. Would you like to reverse this invoice and generate a new invoice? Yes, we would, because we want to cancel or void the old one. So by reversing it, that will happen. And we want to create a new invoice for the new amount. So we tick on yes. Okay. When that happens there, it then prompts and says, okay, it's looking at that original invoice we had, the one on the 30th of the 4th. This was the original invoice number. It'll stick a little R after it, so the reverse invoice. So when we reverse anything in Premary, it usually pushes a -R afterwards. So just accept it and go okay. It'll then, once it's reversed that invoice, it'll then open the new AR invoices, the new AR invoices screen, and it'll have that new invoice sitting in there ready for us to do. So we could see that the details have adjusted. If we have a look at the details line, we can see that it's gone through, it's adjusted the total, it's adjusted the retention calculation, the GST calculation, all looks fine. So to finalize that off then, what we would do is we'd naturally print it, and then in this case, I'll just post it straight away. So we've completed that process. Any questions in that process? Because that's a pretty critical one to understand because it does happen quite regularly. Okay. Once we've done that, I'll refresh that and it's just come up as billed. So that's in April. So let's say, for example, now I need to add the claim number 2 for May. Okay, so come in here, so go claim number 2, comes up to May to the date, same thing. So now we'll see we've got a previous work completed, and then we'll be able to come in here and be able to say, okay, we've got another 20,000, this month, etc. So off we go, we start doing the next month's claim. Exactly the same process. Okay. Now, just bear in mind, you can only ever have one in pending. So if this one here was in pending and it hadn't been billed, you would not be able to insert another progress claim. You would have to make sure this has been invoiced to make sure these figures have all come through onto the next one and allow you to do that detail. Okay. Rightio. So that's claims. Let's now talk about a couple. So we've got that there. So revising a claim, we've talked to that. Let's now talk about retention. Now, retention has the ability, as you'll see when we set up the progress claim, we set up the structure of how we want to reclaim retention. And I can't recommend enough, if you ever see a retention calculate incorrectly, reach out to us to ask what needs to change or what has to happen to fix it. Okay. So how we withhold retention is it's auto-calculated from the rules that are set up on the progress claim report screen. Okay. And it's refined on the progress claim line screen. Now, we've got a little recommendation here. We recommend to zero out lines that are for negative variations so that retentions are not reducing. In Premier, when we go to the progress claim report screen, this is where we originally set up the retention. Remember, we set up that screen. But the details, and I think I mentioned to you, when you change that, you'll see in here is that the details are stored beside each line item. So let's say, for example, you have a negative variation. Something's been removed from the contract, okay, or something's happened. In that case there, you have the ability, you'd come across to your addition screen, come across here, you'd be choosing on here. Oh, excellent, I'm on a different job, all good. That's fine, I've got an example here, I'll use it. So you can see on here that we've got some variations. Let's say, for example, one of these was a negative variation, or on this particular variation, we weren't to withhold retention. For whatever reason, we can come in here and control that on this here. So it means that if I ever make a claim against this line item in progress claim, there will be no retention withheld on it. Just gives you some flexibility to be really specific. Now, the reason we don't recommend having withholding retention on negative claims is because often a negative variation will reduce the contract value, and sometimes, even though it's a negative, you don't want to reduce the amount of retention you have withheld from that client. Some of our clients are happy to do it. Other clients are saying, no, the main contract, that's what we've calculated retention on. If we have a variation that reduces it, we don't want to effectively give back retention at that point in time. So once again, if there's any questions around that as you go through, let us know. Okay, so how do we release retention? So there's two ways of release retention. So we've shown you how you adjust for retention when you're making these doing these progress claims. Let's say, for example, you now need to actually request that retention from your client. Contract's finished, need to request retention. There's two ways of doing it. The first way is that it's done within an actual claim. So this is probably, for progress claims, probably our preferred method, because what that'll mean is that you'll actually come into a progress claim. If I go back to the progress claim screen, you'll see here there's a tab called Release of Retention. So you'd come in here, you'd then come in here and say, okay, I want to release 50% of retention. So it'll calculate at when you do practical completion, 50% of retention comes back. You hit apply. It'll calculate across all the fields where the retention's been held, and that will form part of a claim. Now, you might find that you'll do your final claim and you're not doing anything with retention, and then you can do a subsequent claim for the release of the retention if you want to keep it separate from that final claim for clarity. Okay, so that's what we would potentially recommend to do, because that will actually then release that retention. Okay, when we do the progress claim. The other way to do it is there is a screen called progress claims. Retention. Let me remind myself, process retention. Now on this screen here, you can select the customer. So if we select a customer, okay, I'm just choosing any customer here. You can then locate the job that relates to that particular customer. Okay, so come in here. If you highlight that particular job, it'll show you what invoices that have been, you've had it withheld on you. If you want to say, okay, I want to release all remaining retention, you could actually click on here. It would calculate. Okay. And I'll say, okay, $25,000 going to release. You can then create a separate invoice from this detail here to release that retention. So two ways of doing it. As I say, the progress claim process is probably a better way of doing it for your head contract claims. Just because there's a few nuances and the type of information it shows you on the process retention screen, you can do it on that screen, there's no issues, but it's easier to see the information on this screen rather than that screen. So that's why we find some people tend to do it. Okay. Rightio. Reporting. Let's talk about a couple of reports within Premier and how we recommend using them. Okay, so the first one is a pending progress claim report. This here will actually, depending on what parameters you put around it. So let's say, for example, it was for me. I could say, okay, I want to look at all the pending progress claims in the system for me as project manager. I'm just going to leave it open just to make sure that we have everyone available here. So see as much data we've got. Okay, so what it will do, it will come in here and it will give you a list of any pending progress claims in the system. Okay, this means that you haven't actually invoiced these details. So naturally, you want to see that it's only just recent items. If you saw something back last year, you'd be thinking, hang on, what's going on? There's something here, I need to address this. So as a management tool, using this claim allows you to see what are pending progress claims are still outstanding. So which project managers actually need to go ahead and get some items done. Okay. The other report I'll talk to is called the Progress Claim Summary Report. Okay, it's not at the top here. Now this one here, once again, you can delve onto a particular project manager if you want. I'll just leave it open for today's purposes. So we have a look here. This will give you a list. It gives you quite a bit of information on here. Okay. So a few things. So if we have a look at our one that we're looking at today, the 2503. So it gives the project manager, it says, okay, there's only one report. Some of these up here might have two progress claim reports. Yeah, it might be report number 1, report number 2. So it allows you to see whether there's, double, progress, whether there's 2 progress claims reports that need to be issued or it's just one. It'll then give you a current estimated revenue. So this is the figure that is listed on your original on your estimate. So this figure here, and then you have your contract sum, which is obviously the total of the progress claim lines. That's on the item on your progress claim line screen. Now remember, we reconciled these two figures. The key here is if you see any differences, so like here you can see the current estimated revenue is this figure, whereas you see here's a contract sum, you need to investigate what the difference is. Quite often what it could be is, there's been there might be a variation or something that hasn't had an additional progress claim created or something like that, hasn't had a progress claim line created. So in that case there, you'll see a difference. So if you ever see a difference on this, it's important to investigate why, because you could be missing out on potential revenue. So you're not actually claiming for it, which you need to make sure you are. Okay. Next one here is the claim number. Which just shows you where you're up to. So gives you a bit of an indication how many claims have gone through. End date. Now this is a date that's entered in the system. It's saying, okay, the end date when you're into the progress and what was the last date that the progress claim was raised. So like here, I'd go back here and say, okay, this one's January. What's happened to February, March, April, for example? So what's happened? Of course, you shouldn't have that if you're on top of it, and you probably won't, but it just does flag any red flags. Completed to date, this is a total figure of how much you've claimed to date on that particular project, which gives you a little bit of a completed percent based on what your original contract sum is, and shows you the balance remaining. So the key column on this here is this variance column. All the others give you information, but this variance column is very important to make sure that there is no variance so that you're claiming everything that you can. Okay. Rightio. Okay. So task to complete after this session. Has anyone got any questions as I delve across into the task to complete? Is it similar to what you're currently doing out of interest, some of you? Oh, good. Okay.
Similar to what we're doing.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thank you. Yeah, it tends to be. I can't recommend enough as you go through, when you're setting up, starting to do these items, particularly in your first few jobs, reach out with questions, get the understanding of exactly how best to set it up, particularly around retention and those concepts, to make sure that they're going to be correct going forward. Okay. Okay, so on your Monday.com board, you will have this list of items on here. Now, as with everything with Monday.com board, it's a checklist for you to go through, refresh your memory, figure out where you're up to and what you've done, okay? So you've done your group training, okay? Now what I'd recommend is have a test job. You should have a test job in your test environment now. Set up a claim report, set up the claim lines, create a progress claim, go through the processes that we've done together to actually get familiar with it. So then print your progress claim, create the invoice, okay? So go through all of that. I'd then go through, potentially you can create that second claim. And then probably the big one to make sure you're aware of is actually create the progress claim, create the invoice so that it's impending, and then go back in and revise from the progress claim screen, get familiar with what that looks like so that if you do need to revise it, you know how to revise it. Okay. Rightio. Have a look at the reports at the end. Okay, all good. So any final questions? Otherwise, I think we can probably wrap it up. Oh, good. Okay, what I'm going to do, I did mention at the beginning of the session, but for those of you that weren't in at the beginning of the session, I'm just going to let you know. Yeah, there was obviously an issue with the link today. Not sure what's happened. I'm going to check the links going forward, just in case the same issue has happened with any others. It's a Zoom issue that's happened. If there is, I'll send an invitation out to all the attendees. Just make sure you share that with with the rest of your team. But I'll have a check of that. Hopefully today, tomorrow, if not early next week. Make sure there are no other issues. But it'll come through and similar like what I did yesterday. It'll be an update to the session and it'll be a new invite for that time. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Emily.
Okay. Bye.